Yeah, David, I thought that this episode had unpacked so much really good information on negotiations. My favorite part was how to deal with somebody that's adamant about not giving you a number, and how he pivoted quickly with, well, I don't really have a number in mind. And that response right there, that's something that I can take back and implement with my own team on how do you get around that piece? How do you negotiate around that specific barrier when people are just adamant that they don't want to give the number first?
Right. And this is the podcast for 10xing your income and replacing your W-2 through real estate investing. My name is David Lecko. I created the DealMachine app that's helped 10,000 people close their first wholesale deal or real estate deal 10,000 times in all 50 states.
And my name is Ryan Haywood. I've been wholesaling since 2019, and I've gone on to do over 450 transactions and have built my own portfolio along the way.
Brad, would you mind telling us about that very first deal you did back in 2010?
Yeah, so going from more bird's eye perspective, a little bit more granular, the first thing that I want to submit to the audience is that your biggest wins always come at the point that you want to quit and you keep going. So I remember when the lead came in. Okay, it was a hot August day. Gas was $4 a gallon. I couldn't put a full tank of gas in my truck at the time. And what do you do in a hot August day when you don't have money for gas? You ride with the windows down. So I was sweating. So I get home, I look at my phone, my cell phone, and there's a voicemail. And the voicemail is very much like every other voicemail that I'd received. It was, hey, I got a house I have to sell. Keep in mind, this is in 2010, right? So the market is in shambles, foreclosures all over the place, tough market to retail exit. And so I went to the appointment. I'd never bought an investment deal, but the reason that I went to that appointment was I had what we call in the South as a come to Jesus moment. Okay. So I heard the voicemail. I was emotionally beat up. I didn't want to continue. And I said, Brad, this is the life you chose. This is what you've committed to. You got to call the guy back. So it was a divorce situation. And it was one of the more contentious divorce situations I've ever had, because now I go through the house with one spouse. In this case, it was the husband. Wife wasn't really interested in talking to anyone. She was very cold and standoffish, but he signed the contract. She signed the contract. She took the pen and threw it at the husband and hit him right under his eye. Okay. Now she had the paperwork at this point. So all I'm trying to get is the paperwork and get out of the house. So I slowly, I don't even acknowledge that this guy's like got his hand over his eye at this point. And I reach over across the kitchen table and grab the paperwork, and I slowly slide it back, hoping she doesn't engage me in the same way. And I was like, thank you guys. I'll be in touch. And I'm out of the house. So that was the first deal that I had. It was a fun situation.
So why did you end up getting in touch with her so that she left a voicemail on your phone anyway? How did that happen?
Yeah, everything that I was doing at the time was bandit signs. So the ugly we buy houses signs. And I was kind of the bandit sign king of my city until I got fined twice.
Okay.
One time was $18,000. So they were
very,
very unhappy with me.
Whoa, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. So
what strategy would you recommend now for somebody getting started?
For getting started, man, I think you do what you can do for 5 months straight. So I recommend that some people have more time than money. And if you have more time than money, then spend your time, but be committed to what you're doing. Okay. Some people have more money than time in that case. And I look at that as being $1,000 per month or higher. So if you have $1,000 or more to invest in marketing, then what I really like is search. Okay. Being in a position where people are actively trying to find a solution. They're going to a major search engine. They're typing in, sell my house fast, companies that buy houses, that kind of thing. And so I really want to be in a position where people are searching for a solution. And right now we're buying roughly 12 leads would be one contract. So it's very efficient in terms of time.
Got it. 12 leads become one contract. So how many of those? Okay, got it. So that's actually very important to hear, because a lot of times I'll hear from DealMachine customers that's brand new. They'll say, oh man, I'm striking out. How many types of appointments have you been on? Well, 4. All of them struck out. But what you're saying is you actually need 12 to get a deal.
Yeah. And that's much better than a lot of marketing channels. So I used to do a lot of direct mail, and, I found that to be tougher because, people were not actively raising their hand for help. Right. But anything works if you do it long enough and you're committed, so I'm not saying this is the secret solution to doing things. You have to be committed. I mean, if you cold call enough people, you'll buy a house. And for most people, as an example, I have a husband-wife team with me They did 1,000 outbound calls. They made $230,000 cash. Okay. Now, most people, if they knew that they were going to get $230 per phone call, they would call until the phone melted. But people just don't have that certainty of getting through the learning curve, going through struggles so that they can have success. So it's just sticking with the path, man. You guys know that, though.
That's pretty awesome. You broke it down at $230 per call. Pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, make $1,000, make 4 calls, whether they pick up or not, you know. But yeah, so, you gotta continue.
Can you break down how you end up making money from this type of deal? Because you're calling out, so they're not listing it on the market for some reason. They're usually distressed property owners, right? So, but how do you make money from it if you're somebody trying to do your first deal and you've never bought a house before?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest benefits of real estate, and one of, I would feel, is also a detriment in a certain way, is that it's a very wide and a very deep knowledge base. So you have to know a lot about a lot of different things. And one of the things that we're really good at is deal structure. So, you know, we kind of talked about this offline, but a lot of what we do is we'll buy a house creatively, we'll sell it with owner finance and really become the bank. So we get a down payment that's often better than a wholesale fee. We'll get a note that's cash flow, and we have cash flow coming in per month. So we're building up our net worth, we're building up our cash and our cash flow really simultaneously, and doing it in a way that a lot of times you can do this on deals that you can't wholesale anyway, right?
Yeah. But what do you mean by that you can't wholesale? Can you explain that?
So a lot of wholesale deals, you know, they're selling to the fix and flip market. So, you know, the old adage of maximum allowable offer, 70% minus repairs, minus wholesale fee. So like you have to buy deep equity and able to assign in order to assign it in most cases. You know, sometimes you can sell it to a REIT, sometimes you can sell it to a landlord, but by and large, you're selling to the market that also wants to make money. But let's say that there's a situation where the seller owes more than 70% minus repairs. Well, most wholesalers can't do anything with that deal. But with what we do creatively, we can buy that house subject to, we can sell that house owner finance and do extremely well on that deal up to 85, 90 cents on the dollar. Because right now, like one of the biggest benefits in the market right now is the interest rates that we're taking over. We're still taking over a lot of 2, 3, 4% money. Right. And then taking that and repositioning it with owner financing. So we'll have a house with an underlying note of 2% and sell that same house at 8% and make 6% on that balance. We're literally making more than the bank is without having to lend the money. Yeah, but you have to be good at deal structure to do this. So that's why I say I feel like wholesaling has its benefits in that it's relatively safe. It's easy to get into.
It's simple. It's where most people start. But I'm kind of intrigued because you started with this.
Yeah. My first 4 deals, everything that I did is what I was taught to do by a guy named David Alexander. I always want to pay tribute where tribute's due.
Yeah. Oh, so you had a coach.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in the mentor-mentee relationship. Most of what I've accomplished is because I've had someone that's accomplished something first, and they've been able to pour into me and teach me what they did. I think that's the shortcut to everything. It's like find someone that's where you want to be, replicate the model, right? It's not that hard. But outside of like having people help me, I was a slow starter. Like I was not very good at the business. I'm not innately like amazing at negotiation or like, I had a lot of holes in my game. Right. But I had someone that I could go to that really patched that. Right. So my first 4 years were all deals that we called sub 3 deals, which is a deal where you buy it sub 2, but you put the buyer in place owner finance before you close. And you end up never owning the house, similar to a wholesale deal. But instead of just getting a wholesale fee, you get the down payment, you get the note, you get the cash flow. So we're literally cash flowing on houses that we never owned. And I did that my first 4 years. So that built my cash flow base. It built my net worth up. And then I started taking deals retail after that.
Got it. So, wow, a mentor helped you do all this. That makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of moving pieces here.
Yes.
And you put out bandit signs and somebody called you, said they needed to sell your house. How did you know what you could offer on her house or their house?
I had no idea, man. And so now my answer would be far different because we never make offers. We never give a price in the negotiation sequence that I have today. And there's various reasons.
How do you do it without making an offer?
Well, that's a loaded question, but all right. So there's only 5 numbers that I need to know if I can buy a house and what I can do with it. Okay. The mortgage amount, the repairs, the ARV, okay, the arrears, which is back payments on the loan, and what the seller wants as walkaway money, which is in addition to what's owed. Okay. My first phone call with the seller, I call it the triage call. We get 4 of those 5 numbers. So we get roughly what the repairs are, we get what the mortgage amount is, we get the arrears, and we get what they're hoping to walk away with. And before the call, we have some semblance of understanding of what the value is. So with those 5 numbers, then I know what I can do or can't do with the house. Okay. Now, it's really just about asking people what they want for their property. So, and how we would say it is, after I do A, B, C, D, and E benefits to you, how much are you hoping to walk away with? This is after the mortgage is taken care of, after all the costs have been considered, and I close on the date of your choice. How much are you hoping to walk away with? This is your check at the closing table. And so they give us a number. It's like, well, I am doing this. Is that the least you'll take? I am doing that. Is that the lowest you'll go? We are in a transitioning market right now. You can't see yourself doing any better than that. And so they're really negotiating with themselves. And so the reason that we never give a price or make an offer is 3 reasons. Number 1, you can't get shopped if you never make an offer. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that many of the people in your audience right now have been in situations where they've left an offer, and the seller, of course, wants to think about it, right?
Right.
And so it turns into an auction scenario because the first offer that they get, they're calling everybody that they can get and saying, hey, can you beat 230? I got 231. I got 233. And so you get shopped. Number 2, oftentimes, whenever you have really good lead flow, the seller's price is lower than what your offer would be. So it creates, in statistics, you would call this a type 2 error. It's an unrealized gain. It's a gain that you would have made had you not had a bad process. Mm-hmm. So by having the seller tell you the price, oftentimes their price is lower than what you would have offered. And number 3, by never giving an offer, I think it's easier to get to these kinds of deal structures. So that's kind of how we do it now.
Do you ever get to a point where they won't give you that? How much are you wanting to walk away with? Like they're just going to play the, you tell me, you tell me how much you can pay. Do you ever get to that situation?
Yeah, Ryan, I really don't have a number in mind, and I wouldn't want to really offend you with a dirty lowball offer. So how much are you hoping for?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, there's script work for all of this, man. Like I can talk about this in a scenario that I had years ago, if you like. So I had somebody that I knew that I was actually training this guy in Chattanooga. And I said, hey, I'm going to Chattanooga. This was one of the last houses that I personally bought. And this was, I think, in 2018. And so I go to the house. I already know that this guy has offers. Okay. And the scenario was kind of interesting because this guy had inherited the house, but he put his aunt in the house. She'd turned 90. She'd since gone blind. And he now needed to sell this house to pay for her care. I really loved the story with this because the guy was trying to take care of his family. And so I'm going through the house. I already know he has offers. And I already told my guy, Chad, I said, I'll tell you what I buy it for. And so I go through the house. He says, well, what's your offer? I said, I really don't have a number in mind. Let me ask this about the house. Shelve it, going through the house. What's your offer? Well, I wouldn't want to offend you with a dirty lowball offer. And most people know what they need. So let me ask, how much are you hoping for? He said, this is what I need. And I ended up buying it creatively cheaper than what other cash offers were, because I made the walkaway money about what he is getting. And I made it a process about him. And as I pulled out my closing paperwork, my purchase and sale agreement, he actually made a joke. He said, Brad, I can tell you've done this before. I said, this is actually my first time, James. So we go through the paperwork and buy the house. But it's because I never made an offer that I bought the house, because he already had 4 offers. If I'd left a 5th offer, he probably would have gotten a 6th.
Right. Yep.
So were the other 4 offers actually higher than what you bought it for? Is that what you said?
Some of them were. Yeah. Some of them were.
So why did you think he went with you, even though he was possibly getting more from the other offers?
Because if you ask good questions with a seller that has a higher offer, then you can almost always create enough doubt in those offers to where it doesn't seem real. And a lot of times what we do whenever I negotiate with a seller is I go through, this is what I think the house is going to exit for. We agree to that. We agree on all the construction costs, all the cost to sell. We come up with a break-even number. Okay, so James, this is the number where if I gave you this, and I can't, but I wouldn't lose any money, but I wouldn't make any money, right? And so if there are offers that are higher than what that break-even number is, then it's very easy to create so much doubt in the seller's mind that offer is real. And frankly, I don't think it's real. And then we talk about how some wholesalers say, well, whatever you want, I can give you, hoping that they can assign it. But you find out about it the morning of closing. And I don't want this to happen to you.
Yep.
Man, that's like a masterclass right there in a few sales techniques. I'm sure you've got some others. How do you start off an appointment where you go? Do you go meet the seller in person?
We used to. Everything I do now is virtual because we're in multi-state. But for years it was in person. And it's certainly, you have a better batting average in person because you can create more rapport and trust much quicker. But whenever you go virtual, you have more at bats. So you actually net more deals as like an actual number, even though your percentage goes down. But I'm happy to talk about how I would go through that scenario if you like, or if there's questions around it.
Yeah, I'd really be interested in that, because when I've tried to use a script before, I then lose focus. I'm like unable to listen as good to the actual seller. So I end up typically just putting all that and then just talking and have a conversation. But I'm
Yep.
sure I'm leaving some, things on the table because, I don't have the perfect response to every scenario like you seem
Well,
to really have mastered. Well,
I
you've got it
agree.
internalized, right? You don't have a script in front of you now.
No, absolutely not. And
Yeah.
it's been years since I've personally bought, but I actually agree with you. My script is really based on asking questions, and I think you can lead people effectively if you ask the right questions. So I'm not telling anybody anything, right? But I think number one, you have to believe in the service that you offer. Like our first core value is positive impact. Like if we can't positively impact someone, then we don't want to do the deal. And so there have been many scenarios where I've gone into a house and said, look, you don't have to sell it. It looks pretty good. Why don't you just list it? And sometimes they would say, well, we might just do that. Do you have a realtor that you recommend? Absolutely. And that was positively impacting that person in the best way. But contrarily, there would be times whenever I go in the house and say, why don't you just list it? And they would know that I didn't need the deal. And they'd say, well, Brad, we want you to buy it. You're going to buy the house, because they also understand that I don't have to have their deal. Right. And that just comes from an abundance of lead flow. So I think you have to ask questions and lead with authority, but also a frame that is serving people in the best way. And if you have that, then I think you can come up with a really good negotiation sequence.
A lot of new investors don't feel like they have an abundance of lead flow, so they're
Right.
afraid to say things like that. But I heard on some podcast, the guy got his first deal by saying, hey, upfront, I'm not going to be your highest offer, but if you prefer speed and convenience, then I'm your guy.
Yep.
And so I always remembered that and try to say that up front to not waste my time, because I hate it when you go through this really long process and they really only just wanted to know how much you're going to offer anyway.
Yep.
They didn't really want to sell their house.
Yeah. And so I get through with those people because, they've got to make me the offer. And so because I never will make an offer, if that's just an impasse, then it's an impasse because I'll never give a number. Never.
Yeah. You said it's been a while since you've personally bought homes. So do you only coach people now, or are you saying you have someone in your business that's making the offers?
Yeah. So we have an acquisitions team. We have a dispositions team. We have an ops team. We've had a construction team. I built the business to where I kind of delegated myself out of a job in many ways. And so my team, depending on the person, was better at their role than I was outside of acquisitions. I was still the best acquisition person. But, my real role within the company was to do final approvals. Well, preliminary and final approvals on purchases. Because if you have good inventory in the company, really, really good inventory, and everything else is kind of mediocre, you can have a pretty good company. If you have mediocre inventory coming in the company and great processes after the property's captured, you're still going to have a mediocre company. So the value of a company in our space is really the value of the inventory. So we've got to be really, really good at capturing deep equity day one, really good deals.
I see a lot of people, maybe they've done 8 deals and they're ready to scale. So they hire somebody to do acquisitions, but only pay them on commission, when really they haven't even like processed themselves, and it ends up really hurting them and not working out. And they waste time training somebody who just moves on without closing a single deal. But I'm curious, for somebody like you, like, can you walk us through the stages of being able to really outsource yourself from that company and being able to do what you do? I don't know how much time you spend at the beach in Florida in your new house, but kind of walk us through, kind of paint the dream and walk us through the stages you got to get there.
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, man, because I want people to stay in their genius. And I think the genius is, what are you good at? What do you enjoy? What's high value? So like those three things really intertwining, because there's a lot of things that I'm good at that I enjoy that's really not high value. And there's a lot of things that's high value that I just don't enjoy. And if you don't stay in your genius, then you have a shelf life, because I see a lot of investors and it's happening more and more now, but I see a lot of investors, I can't name you. And guys, I've been around 20 years now. I can't name you 12 investors that have done 12 deals a year for 12 years straight. I've seen a lot of people go to 30 deals a year and then crash out. And I've seen people build teams, but I've never seen the solopreneur do a deal a month for, a significant amount of time, because you're continually inundated with the problems that you don't enjoy. Because again, it's a very wide and a very deep knowledge base. So for me, the first time I ever went to get insurance, I realized I didn't have insurance on the house. File an insurance claim cost me $40,000. That's a $40,000 lesson of you need a $40,000 a year employee to handle this. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to depend on the person. But for me, I think an ops person first, more of a generalist. That's the person that's going to deal with, dealing with the title company, dealing with realtors. Potentially, if they have a sales background, they can do the first call with the seller. They're not buying, but they're triaging to see if a lead needs to go to the next step. They can deal with utilities. I mean, there's a whole lot that person can do to take things off your plate so you can go to higher value tasks. But I'll tell you, man, purchasing is one of the last things that you want to let go of. Specifically because of what I said earlier. If you don't have good inventory in the company, you don't have a good company. So we want to make sure to control that the best we can.
Got it. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Do you find that right now it's harder to find inventory, or is it harder to sell it?
It depends on the market. There's a lot of markets like Florida right now. There's a lot of supply markets in Florida. But there are some markets where, things are just as good as they were, really in 2018, 2019. So it's a different market right now, I think. And I think that it remains to be seen as to whether it's really around the election or really what's going on, because we have mortgage apps that are pretty darn low. Rates have gone from 3% to 8% down to 6 1/8 as of the time of this recording. The Fed just cut half a point, but then mortgage rates in the 10-year Treasury went up the next day. And it just doesn't seem like things are normal, and so it just depends on what you're doing. Owner financing solves this, because as the market gets worse, owner financing gets better because banks tighten, more people need owner financing. So this is why I did only owner finance from between 2010 and 2014. But, that's a different model. So it just depends, man. But here's the thing. I don't care what the market is doing. I want to know where it's going. And I think the risk right now is that you hold too much inventory. The risk in an appreciating market is that you don't hold enough inventory. The risk in a depreciating market is that you hold too much. And so I think we're in this scenario where buyers have decided that they're unwilling to come into the market, but sellers have not recognized quite yet that the buyers aren't there. And so you have this disconnect, and then it's really going to come down to who's going to cut price and who's going to withdraw from the market. We'll see what happens.
Well, I'd love to even have you back for an episode exclusively on more sales tips. I really enjoyed you sharing those.
That was awesome.
If somebody also wants to learn more about what you do with the seller financing, I know you've got bradsmotherman.com. Is there any other place you'd like people to come check you out?
Yeah, investor creator on all the places where podcasts exist, and then hit me up on the Insta. I'm a little bit older guy, but hit me up on the Insta. We're there. We're on the TikTok as well.
Oh, you are? Okay, great.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Brad, for your time today and sharing your story. And it was a pleasure. And like I said, I'd love to have you back for a sales episode.
Happy to. Great to be with you guys today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.